Content warning. The following parody may include words, phrases, topics, or situations that some may find offensive and/or traumatizing. To skip this parody, please jump ahead to the 3-minute 15-second mark to listen to the episode. Thank you. Is the coronavirus pandemic and global lockdown causing your portfolio to spiral out of control? Watching your investments going down the toilet? Are you desperately seeking a new way to keep up your lavish lifestyle while appearing to be charitable and giving? Well, seek no more. You found the autism industry, and there's big money in this growing epidemic. Some of you might be a bit unsure about a lucrative investment. You might be thinking, this is risky. Aren't they trying to cure autism? How does one invest in this seemingly niche market? Friends, there is no reason to be nervous. Autism is a lifelong condition that does not have a cure, and most of the healthcare industry is focused on treatment, not a fix. And considering that autism affects more people than childhood cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined, that means there's going to be a lot of families with autism seeking a wide variety of medical treatments, therapies, and services. Think of it, an entire fortune awaits you in a lifetime of care for people touched by autism. Want to learn more? Ready to enter the next big market of prosperity? Then join others like yourself at the Autism Investor Summit, a 3-day event where you can meet with service providers, your fellow private equity investors, and other industry professionals to learn more about what the future holds for the autism industry, such as what's hot, what's not, what's next, and why, where valuations are heading, new strategies that are gaining traction, how the capital markets have fed the autism frenzy, and where they may be headed. Can't make the summit? Don't worry, there's big money in ABA therapy too. Attend our 2-hour webinar to find out just how substantial your return on investment in ABA service provider organizations can be. Who's buying? Who's selling? Who's winning? Who's losing? For only $200, you can attend this unique event and learn how to grab your share of the market. Space is limited for both events, so don't hesitate to jump on this opportunity. Some restrictions may apply, not available to people with autism or autism advocates. This product is meant for educational purposes only. This is not an offer to sell securities. Subject to change without notice. Times of approximate. Not responsible for direct, indirect, incidental, or consequential damages resulting from any direct defect, error, or failure to perform. At participating locations only. Not recommended for children. Pre-recorded for this time zone. Reproduction strictly prohibited. No solicitors, no alcohol, dogs, or horses. Terms of subject to change without notice. Other restrictions may apply. Sorry, no CODs. Hello, and welcome once again to Neurologic. I'm your host, Leo Jones. The preceding, as it's now apparent, is a satirical parody of 2 recent events regarding the autism industry. But what is the autism industry? Who's holding these events? Why is there an investment market for autism anyway? To be honest, I don't really have all the answers. Partly because they're not easily available, and partly because the organizers want to avoid this becoming, in their words, a polarizing issue. Indeed, it is polarizing, but not because of the interpretation. In all actuality, it's due to the sheer existence and hubris of the language for this conference and the sessions hosted. If you're not aware, there seems to be a whole autism industry. That is, an entire sector geared to profit from therapies and treatments for autistics, at least here in the States. Yes, the healthcare system is a for-profit system, which means that it's all for sale. This is not a bug, it's a feature. and conferences, summits, and all sorts of meetings are blooming across the country to encourage private equity investment. There is no universal standard, no overseeing organization regarding various therapies, which means a whole lot of businesses and groups have formed and are needing investment to either start up or continue or even expand their services. Just from doing some cursory searches and exploration, this primarily is focused on our old friend ABA. Yes, that ABA, or not that ABA. The acronym ABA gets slapped on so many things it's become as meaningless as the term organic regarding groceries. But it's what a lot of parents search for and are told their child needs, so they buy in. I'm still working on sorting out ABA in a future episode, because every time I untangle a knot, another one appears, and it's a mess. As any of you who have done any kind of searching for ABA, it really is just, what exactly is ABA? What's not ABA? Is this been modified? Is that been modified? What exactly are we meaning? Are we talking old style ABA? Are we talking what the new style ABA is? What's the new style? There doesn't really seem to be any kind of universal standard here for ABA, and honestly, I don't even know if I'm going to ever be able to tackle it fully in one episode. I'd like to, but we'll see about that. Maybe this month. I don't know. Anyway, this summit, which I described in the commercial, and if you didn't listen, that was a parody commercial for the Autism Investor Summit, and using a lot of its language. So it, just in case you didn't read it, that's what the commercial was about. This summit popped on my radar a few weeks ago, and it tries to frame itself in a really nice light. Quote, "When done correctly, investing in an ABA organization can provide resources that can help increase access to care in remote areas, invest in technology and infrastructure, professionalize an organization, and more. The goal of the conference is designed to educate investors and service providers about investing responsibly and ensuring the influx of capital is made with patient outcomes and quality in mind." End quote. I mean, that sounds nice. When done correctly, right? Invest responsibly sounds like a disclaimer that should be added to stock market trading firm commercials. Yet there's some issues here. For one, no autistics are running this event. I don't even really feel that they're welcome. Again, from the Summit FAQ, or Frequently Asked Questions. What are the requirements for attendance? This conference is designed for ABA and autism service providers, private equity investors, and related industry professionals. How do I know if I should register as a service provider or investor? You are a privately owned service provider if you are independently owned and operated, your organization has yet to raise funds. You are a private equity-backed service provider if your organization has raised outside capital and is currently under the management of a private equity group or financial sponsor. You are an investor if your primary role is to source and invest in healthcare organizations. You are an other industry professional, attorney, investment banker, accountant, etc. Finally, you are neither a service provider or investor, but provide ancillary services such as legal services, accounting, diligence, etc. How do I know that this conference is right for me? This conference is intended for those who are interested in learning more about the impact of investing in the autism space, understanding trends in the ABA market, and learning about best practices. End quote. Well, I certainly am interested in learning more about the impact of investing in autism space. Wait, I'm sorry. They don't mean autistic spaces. I'm sorry, I completely just missed that one. And what is meant by best practices? So there's no autistics running this thing, unless you're a private service provider or an investor or an industry professional or you provide ancillary services. You're not the audience they're looking for. I have good news though. There is an autistic presenter. That's right, there is someone who is autistic at the event, and it's someone that's presenting. Is he presenting about various investment opportunities? Is he presenting about how to maintain quality while investing in a healthcare organization? Is he even providing other kinds of presentations about ensuring proper practices and verifying, auditory data. As in, whenever you go and you audit, you figure out what's going on, make sure everybody's up to snuff, right? Make sure they're all following protocols. Is he any of that? Oh, no, he's not. He's just a motivational speaker and has the smallest increment of time, 30 minutes, in comparison to all other presenters, which at least get an hour. And he'll be speaking over lunch. That's it. Nobody else. No other autistics, nowhere. I find it hard to believe there isn't at least one autistic that works in the financial investment sector somewhere. There's got to be. Surely there are other industry professionals, per the FAQ, who are also autistic in this world. Considering the content, however, it wouldn't surprise me if they decide to pass on this opportunity. It just, when you check out this website and you find out what's going on, it really does sound terrible. So if there are other autistics who have considered and decided to turn down this opportunity, it's honestly, I am not surprised. The way that autism is described is bad. And the fact that we're not really involved and they're trying to kind of keep this hidden within the industries is not surprising either. This summit isn't alone in angling for the almighty Autism Industry dollar. A webinar notice hit my radar around the same time, and whereas the summit's descriptions were cleaner, more precise, it seemed almost altruistic, the language described in the webinar is less so. What caught my attention first was this headline, and I'm quoting from this. Big money in ABA, review of the data. I mean, shit, is it any more obvious than that? Big money in ABA. Not reviewing ABA, not does the data pan out ABA. Does ABA therapy actually meet the conclusions of what people want? Does it meet the expectations? Is it justified? No, big money. But wait, there's more. This is from the site. Quote, in December 2016, Company A, I've redacted their name, sold smaller Company B, also redacted, to a larger private equity firm with $1.5 billion under management. With this transaction, Company A exited the autism industry with $270 million, realizing a return on investment which would end up being one of the most successful exits in the autism industry. Since 2010, more than 60 private equity firms have entered and left the field, buying and selling nearly 150 ABA service provider organizations. With targeted acquisitions of the largest ABA agencies and subsequent follow-on acquisitions, it would not be inaccurate to estimate the combined market share of private equity-backed organizations as high as 70 to 80%. In our upcoming webinar, we will address these questions by reviewing data gathered over 6 months with thousands of hours of investment to begin to piece together the real story. End quote. I mean, wow, that's a lot of money you're talking about. I mean, if you're not sold yet, here's just a few of the learning objectives and outcomes. Quote, participants will be able to operationally identify winners and losers and the resulting impact on the field of behavior analysis. Participants will be able to analyze the correlation between the state autism insurance mandates and private equity activity in the autism industry. Participants will be able to describe the background and competencies of private equity professionals vis-a-vis the background and competencies of BCBA owners. End quote. Also, fun fact, they included this definition in the description. Quote, dry powder. Funds still available to invest in companies, aka deals or transactions, end quote. Dry powder. At best, that's a skiing reference. For those who don't ski, dry powder, or freshly fallen snow that feels soft and doesn't turn to slush or ice, is optimal to hitting the slopes. Granted, I've never heard anyone use that phrase, dry powder, in skiing, or even snowboarding. I mean, technically, actually, they use the term fresh powder because it sounds better, and snow is never really dry, obviously. But again, I'm trying to give the benefit of the doubt here and avoid any gratuitous drug references a la Scarface. All this just sounds dirty, doesn't it? Am I the only one? Am I reading all of this and reading about the winners and losers and investments and the autism industry? Am I the only one that sees sees it that way? Am I being way over the top here? It just feels wrong somehow. Look, I get that in a for-profit healthcare system, this is supposedly normal. It's a part of our system. It's to be expected and provides much needed revenue for service providers in various fields. So that way, outside of hospitals, you have various maybe clinics and others for various conditions that may need lifetime care. If you have maybe leukemia or hemophilia or celiac or something else, that seems to be understandable, I guess. I'm not really sure, and even then, I'm not feeling too great about it. I get it though. I get that this is part of the system and it should be expected. I shouldn't be sitting here shocked with these descriptions. But I am, and it's because our system is terrible. Our healthcare system is absolutely terrible. Most of us are familiar with just how horrific the healthcare system is in this country. How basic services seem to be outrageously priced at astronomical levels. Coverage itself is Swiss cheese-esque with holes and gaps despite the appearance of completeness, and obvious focus on profit over patient health and quality of life. I mean, that's what drives it, and seeing this written out so base, so obvious, I guess maybe that's the difference, that we didn't know about it. The lesser known here, the financial picture behind the scenes. And based on what I've discovered just with this, it's one ugly picture. What happens when healthcare is for profit and those investing are determined to get a return regardless of patient outcomes? How can anyone guarantee that patients, in this case autistics and more precisely autistic children, are put first over investors? How can we be even sure that the influence of investors won't drown out or silence the voices of autistics and autistic children and even their parents? Speaking of, no pun intended, why aren't autistics being included in this conversation? Surely there's a place for autistics in the autism industry that seemingly has this full employment, right? These opportunities for investment. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars, and they're holding summits over 3 days to discuss private equity investment. Surely there's a place for us. I mean, there's got to be, right? There has to be. There's got to be, surely, somewhere. I don't know where it is. Maybe you do. But in all seriousness, what about service providers who aren't ABA, who aren't ABA certified, who aren't ABA included, who don't have the label, or who even dismiss the label in place of something a lot more humane, a lot more, I don't know, better? Something that's more modern, more efficient, more guaranteed results, much more working with the person than working at them. I mean, what happens to them? Do they get to survive? Does our level of care, type of therapy and treatment get dictated by investors instead of medical professionals and patients? That's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm seeing with this. That's why I've got such vitriol towards this, because it's not just about the business aspect, because we can talk about that. We can talk about economic indicators. You can talk about healthcare. You can talk about all that kind of stuff, and I've even said about how our healthcare system in this country is absolutely horrific. But most importantly, focusing right here on this, When we become an industry to invest in instead of actually people that grow and learn and change and need to be accepted, that kind of changes the conversation. And there's a lot of hypotheses that come out of this just by reading about it, listening about it. It kind of brings to mind that some people that may say, oh, no, I'm not in favor of a cure either, may not be in favor of a cure, not because they agree with us that autism doesn't need to be cured and that we need to have treatments. They may be saying this because it's better for their investment. Because, as you've probably heard, the old adage, it's more profitable to treat than cure. Well, that's related to actual disease. Cancer, leukemia, other diseases that are out to kill you. Those things are terrible and should be cured. But we're talking about autism, and no one's died from being autistic. That's not happening at all. But whenever our treatment and therapy is being profitized and turned into an investment for private equity, that seems like it's taking the absolute soul out of this whole thing, out of anything that we're trying to fight for here. So we can't even say, well, we don't want to cure anymore, because we're going to have people that used to disagree and now, oh yeah, I fully agree. And that's because they have their portfolio invested in treatments and therapies marketed for autistic kids. And how can you verify that the treatments and therapies you're getting are not being backed by investments, but backed by people who do seem to actually give a shit about you? I mean, that's really hard to determine. I mean, it's bad enough right now to even know who cares and who doesn't, because you can't get a straight answer from a lot of neurotypicals. Reading their faces is half the time 50% accuracy. It's very difficult to kind of figure out what's going on with this. Is this something that's being put on by people inside the autism community or outside the autism community? It's not easy. It doesn't show itself apparent. And I'm not even sure I want to find out more, because the wording in these websites, the wording that's used, is absolutely terrible. But at the same time, they agree with some of the positions we hold. I'm not sure what to do about this. And I'm sorry to bring this up in the middle of a whole pandemic, but there is another side to this that gets even worse. And why I chose to talk about this wasn't just because I saw these sites, because I could have done a quick commercial and lampooned it a little bit. I could have even done a parody website or just done a blog post about it. But there was something else that caught my eye, and I'm kind of worried about what the future holds, not for myself, but for autistic children. And that is, there's been a rash of private equity investment companies and groups that have stockpiled cash and are kind of waiting for a time whenever they can buy companies. And because we've all heard, because the economy's been so robust, a lot of companies have turned down private equity investment because of how predatory it can be. When you're answering to yourself and not a group of investors, you can make decisions that are overall better long-term and not for short-term return on investment. I heard about these companies stockpiling the cash to the tune of like 1.5 billion, I believe. Don't quote me on that. And what I'm worried about is they stockpile this cash and they're waiting for an opportunity. And right now, a lot of autistic kids are not going to school. They're not going to various doctor's offices unless they absolutely need urgent care. So they're not even getting any kind of therapies or treatments. And so those service providers who provide therapies and treatments may be at the mercy of private equity investment because they're not bringing in patients right now. We're all involved in social isolation, and it's to flatten the curve. We all know, we've all heard it a million times over. We know why. And it's good that they're not bringing in patients right now to protect these kids, to protect their patients. However, it does leave the door open for these private equity investors to come in and offer up lots of cash as an investment in their business, which means they would control a huge portion of what that service provider does. So if the service provider takes that money to stay afloat during this time and says, well, we were already on the way out of ABA. We are transitioning from it into something a lot more therapeutic, a lot more humane, a lot more focused on the patient, a lot more modern, with research and evidence backing it that says that ABA is not working and we're moving to something else. So that transition, they could be in the middle of that transition, and private equity investors may say, no, because ABA is what's most profitable for us. So if you don't do this, we're pulling our money out and we expect to get our full amount back. That's what I'm worried about. I know that's entirely supposition based on little evidence, but how private equity investment works. But when you see a webinar offered that's so obvious, when you see a summit called the Autism Investors Summit, you kind of wonder, maybe something else is going on here and maybe something could happen. And we don't get anywhere near the people who are actually controlling this. And that to me is just terrifying. At least whenever we were focused on changing opinions and societal influences towards autistic individuals, you could directly talk to somebody, you could directly address them. Not in the financial industry. We are very much insulated away from these people. I don't even know who would be the ones investing, who would be the ones putting the money up, what companies. It's not easily identifiable as to who's doing what where. You know, it goes through so many different hands, so many different communication paths. There's no way to know exactly who's responsible and who to direct your complaints to. Who do you address when you need to have a service provider make some changes? At this point, what I'm ultimately worried about here is that these investors could determine the course of autism treatments, autism therapies, how autistic patients are treated, how their mental faculties are treated, how their sensory needs are treated. Because it's not always profitable to provide the best care. And knowing that, you can easily determine that some of the ways we're treated now and some of the ways that insurance does not cover things, that this could actually start to be magnified. Because the insurance company is going to say, well, we only pay for what we cover. The service provider says, well, I'm beholden to the insurance company and to my investors. So while I think this is great for you and I think it's the best option for you, I'm sorry, I can't do it. Otherwise, I will be out of business and I will be broke. And that's terrible. And that's absolutely horrible that autism is now being seen as an investment opportunity, not as a neurological difference, but just yet another way to make money. Not even for us to make money. Because I'm sure if autistics could invest in their own future, we would. In fact, some of us are trying to do so as we speak. As far as financial opportunities to invest in our future, we don't get those. It's pretty apparent. And I honestly don't know really what to do about this. It's very difficult to articulate the next steps here. Who do we talk to? Who do we go to? So I don't know what to do. I don't know if we should start asking every single service provider we talk to if they're backed by private equity investment, because even your frontline people in some of those areas may not even know. You may have someone who comes to your house and provides care, and they don't even know that the company they work for is managed by a private equity firm. So obviously, talking to them, you may have mixed results. You can't just send an email out to service providers because they're not going to be upfront about being taken over by a private equity investor. That's not exactly what anyone would consider to be uplifting, positive news. There's a lot of bad tales when it comes to private equity investment, and from the wording here, they are justified in keeping this kind of a secret because nobody's going to look at this and go, oh, that's great. Yeah, I love the terminology of dry powder. That totally doesn't mean cocaine. It just means cash available to buy businesses. Totally. I don't have any resolution here. I just really wanted to talk about it. And I guess that's probably why I'm posting this now. Because with this coronavirus, we're all inside. We're all dealing with being isolated. Even those of us who may be isolated a lot, there's other things that may come into play that may factor into how we feel. We still may feel isolated, but we also may feel trapped because so many places are closed. You can't go out, and that's kind of when the mind will wander a bit and you'll start thinking of things. And that's when I took a look at all of this information that I had gathered because I thought it was pertinent. I thought it was important. I thought it was interesting. I mean, even as dark as it is, it's still interesting to know that there is a whole industry revolved around investing in autism service providers. And from that, it explains a lot. So if you've ever been sitting back and thinking, why aren't autistics or the autistic community doing more to change perceptions and stop abuse or neglect or just terrible treatments and therapies? Well, here you go. It's literally because we don't have millions of dollars to throw at service providers. Maybe that's the resolution. We should all get together, pool all of our money together, and pay service providers from a private equity investment standpoint. Or we could even buy a bunch of lottery tickets and see if we can raise money that way. I'm not really sure, but the solution here is obvious. We just put all of our money together and invest in these places from a private equity standpoint, and then we can tell them what to do. We can tell them not to use antiquated ABA therapies, not to use therapies and treatments that are not approved. Yeah, there's the solution for you right there. We just gather up our money, private equity investment, and boom, there we go. We can solve so much. And then we can even attend these conferences and enjoy ourselves. You know, we can be part of the listing of who's invited or who should attend. And we can even do things like the investment speed dating. Literally one of the sessions is investment speed dating. And you would think that it would be, oh, okay, you'd have a service provider sit down and then the investors would come by and say, here's why I want to invest in your business. No. No, the service providers go through and essentially try to sell themselves to the investors. You know, please invest in me. Please invest in my company. I'm trying to do the best I can. And I'm trying to work with these autistic patients. Please invest in me, please. Ugh. It just feels so dirty. It's so gross. It's just so gross. Just this one summit and just what goes on. I definitely, if this is normal, if this is the everyday, if this is typical, I am way outlier on this one. I hope you are too, if you're listening, because that way I don't feel so alone. I don't feel so outside of the norm, as it were. I don't really have a whole lot to add here. If you're listening to this, I am going to do a small coronavirus episode because everybody is talking about it, and yeah, I'll give my perspective. I'll talk a little bit about what I've been doing at home. I mean, aside from obviously recording this podcast, and that way maybe have some connection with all of you, because having just this episode, it would be just awful. Just sitting here talking about the autism industry and it being marketed as lucrative and big money and winners and losers, and that just seems like it would be terrible to mark April with. But I figured it was something that was not talked about a whole lot, and we should talk about it. I don't know what the next step would be, but at least it's something different. It's something most of us aren't aware of. So if you actually did enjoy this, thank you. I'm glad you did. If you didn't, that's okay. There's going to be other episodes. We're going to be talking about a few other things. I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of interviews during this time, possibly not even at all for obvious reasons. But I'm looking forward to eventually one day having an ABA episode just to hash things out. But for right now, it is just a mess. So to wrap things up on this episode, this has been kind of casual. I did quite a bit of writing on this, but we've kind of rolled down the hill into very, very casual discussion. So To wrap all of this up, there is an autism industry. It's being marketed as very lucrative. It's being put on by a lot of private equity investment firms, and we have no idea who exactly is in control or how they're in control. And it's very alarming that service providers that we may be dealing with on a daily basis may be in control by investors instead of by doctors and patients, or by a medical code, or even by what we want as patients for our own treatment. So patient-directed treatment and therapy may not be a thing when it comes to private equity investment in service providers. If you can find a service provider that is independently owned and does not court private equity investment, that would be wonderful. I hope that all of you are safe. I hope all of you are well. And I will be releasing another episode very soon. I'm Leo Jones, and this has been Neurologic. Neurologic is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. To view a copy of this license, visit creativecommons.org/licenses/by-nc-nd/4.0 or send the letter to Creative Commons, P.O. Box 1866, Mountain View, California 94042, USA. Neurologic uses the song Furious Freak, created by Kevin MacLeod, for its intro and outro music. Visit him at inconfitech.com. Furious Freak is licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license, creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0. You can reach Leo Jones and Neurologic by email at neurologicpodcast@gmail.com.